gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to a new edition of Political Smackdown. Thank you for inviting us into your home this week. We're happy to be here. We've got the usual crowd, so we're going to jump right in. Well, after being assured of a budget that we could discuss on TV this week, the discussions fell apart this Tuesday with a rather tense exchange between the Speaker and the Pro Tem. Negotiations restarted on Wednesday with little apparent progress this week. The point of dispute between the House and the Senate apparently is over gaming. Andy, want to place a bet on what happens next week?
I'm going to bet that there's going to be some more name calling because you know yourself, Wes, it's still hot in Raleigh. So, this is these two sides have just dug in. I mean, Berger basically called the Speaker of the House a liar this week. And the Speaker kind of said in a nicer way that the Pro Tem was just full of himself. They hadn't broke any agreements. But Tim's in a bad spot. I mean, and I understand what he's saying. If he can't get the votes to pass it with the gambling in it, it's not going anywhere. And, you know, Wes, the Senate a lot of times forgets it's a different animal over in the House than it is the Senate. Y'all are a whole lot more collegial. And I think I may have told a story one time when Dennis Wicker first got elected to lieutenant governor, and he'd always been in a House his whole career. And somebody asked him and said, well, Lieutenant Governor, what's the difference in being in the House and Senate? He said, well, in the Senate, I can walk in the chamber and nobody's putting a fist in my face. So, it's a tough thing he's having to do. Berger is just locked in on gambling. I mean, he just absolutely is. And I thought it was interesting in this morning, which is Friday, Bob Hall, who has been a bird dog for years down there on campaign finance, that sort of thing, had a really good article in the Charlotte Observer editorial page, and he said, you gotta follow the money. And it was unbelievable how much that stuff, there's even one entity, bet you there, called Grover Gaming. So I don't know who that was.
You don't know who it is.
No, you don't. But there is some money flowing through there, and it's, I hate to say it, but it must be having some kind of effect.
Well, Mike, you called part of this the other week when you mentioned that it appeared the goalpost in the House had been moved, and that was the start of the discussion from the Pro Tem this week. Your thoughts on where we are on the budget?
Since none of this looks really good on our Republican friends, can we just talk about the Speaker wanting to legalize guns at UNC?
That'd be fine too.
That was a late in the week story because of the lockdowns at UNC. And of course, it was tongue in cheek. He was just trying not to make it so serious. But anyway, well, I've had this uneasy feeling for a while. When I first read that the Speaker now said it takes 61 Republicans in the House to vote for it, for us to vote for it. I've been told by a pretty good source that instead of the 7 or 8 or 9 Democrats, it's like 4 or 5 maybe Democrats in the House that have agreed to vote for the budget. So if the Speaker's got 30 opposed, that means he's got 42 votes. And 4 or 5 Democrats does not equal 61. And so I think
yes, it does when it comes to Republicans and Democrats.
I think you have to give the Speaker credit for not wanting to bring to the floor something he knows will fail. Berger, on the other hand, said, well, you always said it was a majority of the caucus, which on the Republican side now since April would be 37. That means you would have to have 14 Democrats to pass the House. Then if you happen to have something in it and you've already passed it and the governor vetoes it, you still don't have a budget. So he's hunting something that 72 Republicans in the House, or at least 67, 8, or 9 will vote for with maybe a few Democrats that are kind of like what you said, Andy. Even when Republicans control the House, you never vote against the budget because you have to have one.
That's exactly right.
A few of them take that attitude.
That's good stewardship in my book.
So I guess in the final analysis, it's going to wind up, who's going to be the adult in the room?
Well,
And have some persuasion.
well, Betsy, I know as a retired state employee, this is very important to you, and we're just watching again. What do you think?
Well, of course, and now school has started, and they don't know exactly how many positions they will have. Of course, they know they're being paid at the rate of last year. I just think back, Andy, to whenever all the hoopla that came about when Liston Ramsey was the head of the budget committee, and they said all this about being done, the budget being done in the back rooms with all the cigarette smoke coming out the door, and how when the Republicans came in power, they assured us it would be with transparency. And now, instead of having a group that makes the budget, now it comes down between the speaker and Phil Berger. And I just think that, and also they talk about hang up his legalized video lottery terminals.
Video poker is what it boils down to.
Is that what it is?
That's what
Same
it
thing
boils
as
down to.
sweepstakes was for a few years
Yeah.
that they
Okay.
outlawed.
That was all over the area down below me, the Grover, you know, the little Las Vegas there for a while. But I just think they've got to come up with a budget, and I hope they can come to an agreement without coming to some words across each other. But we'll just wait and see, and Andy, we'll just watch and see exactly. But no, Tim doesn't, you don't take it to the floor until you've got the votes to pass it.
I think, Wes, if we don't have some indication they're going to do it without gaming before the end of September, we may have another year of mini budgets. They may pass the state employee raises. But the one thing Berger's going to hold over the rest of them is there's not going to be Medicaid expansion if we don't do a budget.
That's right.
Well, and he's
That's
already
right.
threatening to take some stuff out that the House has some projects they wanted, and you're going to start seeing that come. And I mean, and that's just hardball politics. That's just the way it works.
Exactly right.
If you live in Cleveland County, you better be praying that whatever the number is for the new courthouse for this year, that we get it, because otherwise it has broad implications for that courthouse's future.
It does.
It does.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch, and hopefully this will come to a resolution in the next week or so.
One more little quick thing.
Sure.
You ever thought about this? They've passed and overridden vetoes on abortion legislation, not letting transgenders play in women's sports. They've passed the Parents' Bill of Rights, and they've passed Medicaid expansion. But Andy, the Republicans are arguing over gambling. That seems like your territory to me.
Well, now, you know, I do have a varied portfolio of things I talk about.
No doubt. Well, speaking of budgets, the national debt and budget deficit continue to grow, adding pressure on the economy, particularly as interest rates continue to rise. And what's become the norm in Washington, we are approaching yet another fiscal crisis with a looming deadline of October 1 to pass a budget or face a possible shutdown. What's going to happen? And Betsy, why do we wind up on these fiscal cliffs year after year after year?
Only when you have, oh, there's the cartoon, okay. But it's only when you have the opposite party in power. And here you've got, you know, the Republicans didn't bat an eyelash whenever Trump wanted an increase in the debt, and the Democrats went along with it because you've got to have a budget, you've got to transact business of the people. And so, and you know, you talk about how the national debt has increased, but let's go back, it was the Trump administration that added so much to the national debt. It was like the tax cuts to the very top 1%, and it rose to like $7.8 trillion during Trump's term. He was known as the king of
And
debt.
now it's nearly 30 trillion.
Well, still, let's just go back and it hasn't been that much since Biden came. But anyway, y'all, but I really think, and I think in good government, They ought to set it up to where you can, this automatically, like the other countries in the world where things like this happen, that instead of putting the nation at a crossroads about whether or not we're going to be shutting down, that they ought to be able to just go ahead and do it. But no, it's a political football, and it all depends on, and the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, is such a weak speaker. He had negotiated this with Biden. They thought the deal was done, but those right-wing nuts, as Dean would say, in the Republican Party were not happy. And so let's see, and if the government shuts down, it's the Republicans' fault.
Mike, I get more exercise on Friday morning shaking my head on this show than I do the rest of the week.
Oh, Wes.
The fact of the matter is that the budget that we're talking about is strictly discretionary spending, which is a relatively small portion of what's causing the problem.
Yeah, and you know, there's been 5 shutdowns since the 90s. And Betsy, there was one brief shutdown in 2018 on February 8th and 9th for 9 hours when Trump had complete control, not complete, but he had majorities in both houses of the legislature his first 2 years. And so there was a short shutdown even when it was Republicans in control of everything and they couldn't get along. Maybe whoever got that worked out in 9 hours needs to call the Speaker and Berger.
Come back up.
But there have been 5 shutdowns since '95. The most recent one lasted from December 22nd, 18 to January 25th, and this was after the election, and the Democrats were taking the majority from 22 of December 18 to 25 of January. The world didn't come to an end, and it won't come to an end this time. It's just the times in which we live.
Yeah, Andy, one thing is for sure, both parties are responsible for a lot of the problem that we have today, and both parties are responsible for ignoring the entitlements, that's the looming nail in the coffin, I'm afraid.
Well, that's because I think the most endangered species of bird these days are the budget hawks we used to have. Mm-hmm. You don't see them anymore. They're not there. Then you've got problem. I mean, Kevin McCarthy has been basically castrated by his own caucus. Yeah. And this week he went in there and I think he laid a cussing on a bunch of them. What exactly he said, I don't know, but he basically told Freedom Caucus, you want to try to take me out, go for it. And, you know, he just reached the end of his rope with those folks. And I understand that. I would too. I mean, he's trying to govern. I don't think he's a bad man. He's trying to figure out a way to make this thing work, that they don't destroy our government on their watch. I mean, that's what's going to look so bad. And you've got the folks in the Freedom Caucus, they don't care. They're not interested in building anything. They want to knock everything down into the dirt because they don't like government. They don't like anything we've got. I guess they don't want a defense department, and they probably don't. I mean, just where do you draw the line? We've got to have some type of government to take care of the things that are so important to us, like our self-defense. I mean, we got to defend ourselves. You've got all kinds of various things. I mean, we could just be here all morning coming up with stuff that's so critical to this country. But, you know, what I hate to say, and Mike's brought this up more than one time, where is Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan when you need them? I mean, these were statesmen. I mean, they knew that they were something greater than themselves. I mean, even if you look at Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, I mean, they were able to hammer something out. And let's face it, they hated each other for so long, then I think they ended up passing out little black books to each other for their girlfriends. But that's neither here nor there. But, you know, you just have no way of trying to find common ground anymore. And that is what just saddens me more than anything. You can't be a statesman. Anybody that tries, especially on the Republican side, tries to work with anybody else that not even with the Republicans, they can't even work with some Republicans now. I mean, and they're going to threaten to be primary. Trump is threatening the primary folks. I mean, it's just going on and on and on, and there's no end to it. And that's what worries me, Wes.
Well, I would agree, and I think the biggest part of the problem ultimately is the size and scope of particularly the federal government being involved in so much, and a completely different philosophy among some about what the role of government should be in day-to-day America. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Education is our most powerful tool to improve and change our world. Hi, I'm Rhonda Benfield, your host for School Matters. Join me for a new program every other week with information from and about the students and staff of Cleveland County Schools. Discover what our schools are doing to challenge students and help them reach their full potential. You can catch us on Spectrum Cable Channel 19 or stream us live on c19.tv.
Welcome back. Opened on January 1st, 1892, Ellis Island became the nation's premier federal immigration station. The station processed over 2 million immigrants over a 62-year period of operation. Since Joe Biden took office, the government reports that some 8 million immigrants have crossed the southern border illegally, not counting well over 1 million estimated gotaways. This week, New York Mayor Eric Adams joined mayors from other major cities in calling for federal aid due to the influx of illegal immigrants, and called for President Biden to get control of the border. And the governor activated the National Guard. Recently, the International Organization for Migration has awarded the United States-Mexico border the title of the world's deadliest land migration route. Many on the right have been at our wits' end for decades now about how porous the border is, but it appears things are bad enough that even Democrat leaders are pushing back. The Biden administration has floated a potential solution: force the illegals to stay in Texas and other border states, which of course is not much of a solution for the border. And it obviously doesn't address the problem of immigration. While some Democrats are joining the chorus, it will take a bipartisan effort to address, but most importantly, it will take leadership from the White House. Mike, give me your thoughts on this national and humanitarian crisis.
Well, it certainly is a crisis, and it's a growing crisis. Now we're seeing big cities led by liberal Democratic mayors joining the chorus and sounding a lot like the governors of Texas and Arizona sounded for years, the alarm. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and even to some degree California have had to put up with this problem for years. And now we have 800,000 going to a city of over 8 million, and it's causing economic pain that the mayor says they cannot sustain. My goodness, I remember not long ago when the liberals said that all these illegal immigrants were going to be the economic engine that we needed for employers. Funny how that changed when they started showing up in these big cities, not
in these
on
sanctuary
the coast,
cities
that were supposedly sanctuary cities. So the whole thing's been exposed for the lie it is, and now we have big city Democrat mayor after big city Democrat mayor whining about the high social cost of illegal immigration. God help us.
And Betsy, of these hundreds of thousands of illegals in New York that are causing a problem, less than 15,000 were actually delivered in buses by the governor of Texas. Most of these people made their way to these cities on their own. What are your thoughts on the southern border?
Well, just like what we've talked about all along, there's a problem down at the southern border, but it is not like the Democrats are down there saying, come on over, just swim that water and you can come on over.
They're saying that from Washington.
No, they don't. But y'all, I hear that on Fox Entertainment Channel. But you know, there was 162,317 taken into custody down there in March. But that was down 23% from last year's total in March, which was 211,181. This is a lot of people. And of course, you've got many of them are single men that's coming by themselves. You've got families. And of course, you can't blame them for wanting to leave their homes when they're in danger of their lives, or they're coming to America to have a chance at the American dream. And it is a problem. Now, do we, and Republicans and Democrats have a different way of looking at it as far as the wall. People said, we need to put up that wall, finish Trump's wall. And then you look at that section of the wall where they just came in and cut that little door in it, and they were just coming on through, the immigrants were. But it is a problem, and I know that, as far as, it can't be solved overnight, but I do think that, and maybe aid, and I know when you have all these people show up, these thousands of people that show up in these individual cities away from Texas, that they have to be taken care of. And you have to have money to do that. And I don't, and the governor of Texas put those red barrels or orange barrels out there that were dangerous to stop them from swimming across, and they had to be removed. So, you just, it's a problem, but it's not the problem that the Republicans want to make it out to be. It's like Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden and immigration are going to be two major things Republicans keep pounding out for this 24 election.
Now, Andy, I think you and I agree exporting capitalism is the ultimate solution, but that doesn't solve it in the short term. And while 9 or 10 million illegals may not be a problem for Betsy, that's nearly the population of North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Wes, and I've said this many times. The only true solution to this is to send some help down to straighten out these countries. I mean, Colombia right now this past year has produced more cocaine than they've ever produced. You've got all these other in South American, Central American companies that are nothing but they're drug kingdoms for all these gangs like MS-13 and all this other. That's why a lot of these people are fleeing, is for their own safety. I think maybe what we ought to do, Wes, and probably some people are going to say I'm crazy, maybe just send a division or two of the U.S. Army down there and let's clear this stuff out and set up the type of government that these people, I think, truly want.
All right, Donald Trump.
I know it. But that's just the frustration I have at this point, because I agree with you. Capitalism, American style, would do more to help anything. But if you don't have order, how do you grow it? And I feel sorry for these people that have become a political football. I mean, most of them are just average folks that are just wanting to protect their families and make a living. Yeah, we got some drug dealers and some scuzzy ones. Yeah, they're coming too. But the vast majority are just trying to protect themselves. And I think we've got to think of something smarter, where we have to go where they are in these other countries somehow, some way. We've got to stabilize these countries. I don't like the idea of doing it, but I don't know what else we do, Wes.
Mike?
Wes, I misspoke. I think I said 800,000 illegals in New York City in the last year. It's 100,000. But Mayor Adams of New York City is saying that will destroy New York City. That's about half as many in a year as Texas gets in a month. And so if that,
and that's what seems to be lost on everybody. Yes, there's a problem in New York, but can you imagine the crisis in Texas?
It is the crisis, and it's like what Andy says, but I don't know how you go in and, change it in the governments. That's what it is in these countries.
And there's so much drug money, and this is the dirty secret, is most of that's being sold in our country. We're causing this with our bad habits.
But I maintain that we can stop them at the border. Remain in Mexico worked. This does not have to become our problem. It is a humanitarian crisis, and it's happening on our soil, and it will impact our culture for generations. We're going to move on to the lightning round. Betsy, what have you got for us?
Well, Mike stole my thunder. I was concerned when I saw in the News and Observer that Speaker Moore had said that the best criminals are going to have guns, And the best deterrent against a criminal with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And you know, and here I was, and you know, we talked about gun laws and increasing gun laws and things like that. And whenever there was some students there that interrupted the House and hollered out, vote him out, and they were removed from the House gallery. But I hope that this was tongue-in-cheek, Mike, but I really do. I mean, I do not seek arming college students with guns.
Mike?
Well, I had the privilege last night of going to the Reagan-Douglas dinner for the Cleveland County Republican Party, and our guest speaker you see there with my lovely wife and myself. Got two pretty faces there, Betsy.
Yes, you do.
But we had a good time listening to Tricia, and she spent most of her time talking about what she'd been through. And Wes, what I noticed was it's still going on, and her children are still being ridiculed, her cars are still being keyed. And this has been, 6 months almost ago. And there's just no excuse for that kind of reaction. You know, those of us that are inside politics a little bit, we kind of talk about this stuff. My wife, who is not overly political, but she never misses a chance to vote, when we were going home last night, she said, that is just awful what that woman has been put through over a political decision. And you know, I have to agree with her, whether you're going from one party or the other, or just taking a stand. People need to respect property and people.
Absolutely. Andy, what have you got for us?
Well, I'm going to keep with my usual subjects that everybody looks forward to me saying.
Gambling or trash?
Trash.
Trashy gambling.
Well, no, this is going to be something a little bit different. We've got a candidate running for the House of Delegates in Virginia. Here's a picture of Susanna Gibson and her husband, who's an attorney. She's a nurse practitioner. And she has been running now for a while in a district that's a toss-up district right outside Richmond. Well, come to find out, guys, this week, I ain't figured out how, but some Republican operative found her and her husband have been doing porn on live cameras that they interact with their people who follow them, and for somebody will send a message, say, I want you to do this. She said, well, not until you pay me, and I want to see the money in my account. It's live streamed. It's money right there. Here she is running for one of the toughest districts there is in Virginia. She and her husband are publicly having sex on the internet, and she said that her privacy has been invaded. How in the world can you invade your privacy when you're laying out there naked having sex? Now, there was a state senator said, well, I don't understand why they give her such a hard time. She's having sex with her husband. Said, that's better than Trump. Anyway, Wes, I had to do that one just for you, buddy.
And we're going to have to wrap it up at that. I'll never make it through my lightning round. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Andy, for entertaining us here for a minute. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week on a new edition of Political Smackdown.
Hi, I'm Tim Foster, Director of C19 TV. Thank you so much for watching C19 TV, Cleveland County's hometown channel.